Harari from Spanglish Sports World here on the Barn Burner Network and ZINGOTV channel 250. Please remember to download our applications on iOS and Android in the respective stores. Remember, the applications are totally and exclusively free. So there is no reason why not to download them, enjoy them, and comment on them. Remember, please, to leave us a comment if you have downloaded them already about how the functionality is, and if you like our programming here on Spanglish Sports World and as well on the Barn Burner Network. Just want to remind you as well that ZINGOTV can be found on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Well, welcome to another evening of sports, another evening of debate on multiple topics. And with us tonight, we have a very exclusive club. We have Mr. Rob Stats, Mr. Scott Churchson, and Mr. Ovid Schock, the members of the Sports Den. Well, guys, the news are heavy today, not just in sport, but in political side too. But we'll leave the politics to other people to analyze, because what happened today has no name.
It has crossed over into the sports world already in a way.
Oh boy, yeah.
Doc Rivers made a comment on it. You know, like what would have happened if it was, you know, if all those people, the protesters, were African American or black. Mm-hmm. Which my reply was, I was like, black people are like that. What happened today was stupid, and honestly, that's just like, as a white guy, that's our thing in America. Like, we're the stupid people. It's always us who do. It's white people who do stupid things like that. Like I said to one of my friends, I was just talking. I go, dude, it's like, my buddy is African American. I said, I can't imagine it happen. Like, what would have happened? Because black people African Americans aren't that stupid. Like, they wouldn't do something like that. Like, I
didn't know it was even possible.
Yeah, dude. There's a scene. Everybody here seen Bad Boys 2, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It looked like the scene when they're in the Haitian house, right before, who in my house is like the devil, and the devil not welcome in my house. There's a scene where the guy's looking through a hole in the wall, and I'm like, this is the part where Will Smith shoots him. Like, you're supposed to shoot him when he puts his eyeball to the window like that. Like, it was literally, he had smashed out the glass, and he's looking through, and I'm like, that's when you shoot him. Like, the phrase, shoot when you see the whites of their eyes. Like, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's it. Like, oh my God.
If you remember the show 24, back around season 7, about 12 or 13 years ago, terrorists took over the White House. And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way in hell this is ever going to happen. I mean, even my suspension of disbelief in that case, you know, it was too far. It happened today. I got to look at that and say, you know what? It's ahead of its time.
No, you know what? It's sad that it was motivated by who is supposed to be the leader of the U.S., because it's all his fault. This storm on a national monument, because the Capitol building is not just the Legislative Assembly of the U.S., it's a national monument that shouldn't be destroyed. And it's just sad. It's just plain sad. And if he had expectations that some of his party members were going to object to certain states right now, I don't think so, because they are voting right now. And I don't think that no one will want to say, I object.
They all want to go home now. They just want to get home because they were all scared. Because when the mob starts, when they start breaking down windows, they don't know who they're seeing. Mm-hmm. There's 100 different senators. They don't know which 50 or which side. They're just going in there. And unless it's a particular person, and if they're swinging or shooting, things are going to get dangerous. And it certainly sounded like the people I heard being interviewed who were in that building on both sides, they seem to be genuinely scared. So yeah, I think they just want to vote and go home.
Never happened before. Never happened before, as far as I can recall.
I'll tell you one thing: Mr. Cruz doesn't want to touch Florida if he votes against this right now.
I'm going to say
mob him.
I'm going to say one thing though. I don't think this is the end of it. I think in 6 months from now, a year from now, this is going to happen again. This is not the end, but I think this is more like the beginning on this. Everybody was so excited about the fact that 2020 was coming to an end and that 2021 was going to be a better, better day ahead. We're only a week in and look what's already happened. I don't, this is not the end all to be all. There will be something that's going to top this in the next year and a half. Calling it now.
Anyways.
So how about those Mets? How about those Mets?
Well, I actually wanted to start with the recent acquisition by the Yankees today, which left me my mind is boggling.
Mm-hmm.
The Yankees go and acquire Greg Allen from the Padres.
Yep.
What is exactly Greg Allen going to do for the Yankees?
I think it's going to be one of those things, in my opinion. He's going to be a platoon outfielder. They have to look. I'm still surprised on a regular basis. They keep re-signing Brett Gardner to another year. They've got a plethora of outfielders on there. There's been some talk that they might trade Mike Tauchman to the Cardinals. So it's plausible that Allen could be a replacement for Tauchman as that kind of for the outfielder there. I don't know. I was kind of surprised by it a little bit myself, but you know what? Who knows what's going to happen? It'll be interesting to see what the team does. It's not, I think, a big deal on this case. One of the problems I think that happens with this, though, is the fact that he is a right-handed hitter. That team is stocked with right-handed hitters. They need to go get some lefties in there because right now you got Aaron Hicks, who's a switch hitter. You got Brett Gardner, who bats left, and then everybody else in the rest of that lineup is right. And that's a monster concern. So honestly, I was a little surprised. I would have guessed that they would have gone lefty with something like this. But, smarter people than I am.
So here's my next question, because today the news out of Toronto, they put in a bid for Sugano. Sugano, to me, is an unproven pitcher at the major league level. We don't know what he can do. He hasn't against American batters yet. And the Toronto Blue Jays are putting a bid of $100 million for this man.
That's a posting fee, though, right? That's not the actual contract, right?
That's the offer.
Yeah.
5 years, $100 million.
5 years. Okay.
Now, for someone that is unproven at a major league level, I find that, there is better things to do with $100 million that the Jays could do right now.
It's closer to $6 million, isn't it? Guaranteed. And he's a bit old at 32.
Yeah.
So
it's a guaranteed 5-year contract at $100 million. I was like, yeah, it ain't happening.
He's been good for the last 5 or 6 years, but my concern with that is, again, it's an unproven talent. Speaking from Yankee Nation, if any Yankee fans out there remember the name Kei Igawa, they dropped 4 years, $46 million on that guy, and he only pitched like 12 or 13 games, and the rest of his time was in the minors. That was wasted money big time. So this could conceivably be the same thing.
The Angels didn't pay as much for Ohtani. That's what and at least Ohtani can bat.
Yeah, bro.
So
can I throw one more thought in there on this, that why it does actually make sense? The Blue Jays are a small market team, no offense. But if you're able to get a talent like that and a name like that from the Yomiuri Giants, you're also getting Japanese revenue as well. The amount of money that the Yankees got on the outside when they got Hideki Matsui, he was a great player on the field, but they got so much bank from Japan because of the ratings that actually occurred over there. People would be up at all hours of the day or night to watch Hideki Matsui play for the Yankees. So you get Japanese money when you get a Japanese player. They're probably banking on something like this, where you have somebody who's very well known for arguably the biggest team in the Japanese league. They're probably trying to count on some ratings in there as well to try and generate a little revenue that maybe can offset the salary contract.
Yeah, but let's be honest here, that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be playing in Buffalo.
It's still Japan
going
still
to
watching.
Create a lot of attraction.
But Japan might still draw it.
So my question for you, Scott, is that still true? Is there enough of an anomaly of a Japanese player coming here in baseball that still attracts that sort of eyes from that country? Or has it gotten to the point where it's almost like you're not staying here anymore? I'm just, has it reached the all our best guys are going level, and now those eyes aren't following?
I would say a mix of both, but I think there's still a major draw because again, the Yomiuri Giants are the biggest team and the most, notable team in Japan. They're also had a lot of accusations about cheating and doing things like this as well, but they are the team that is the highest market in Japan. So when anybody goes from that team over here, there is an interest on that side of the fence to see how the player does. You saw the impact that Ichiro had, Matsui, Tanaka. You see all of these guys in these kind of markets, and yeah, Japan is fascinated by it. Then you got people that I think Tsuyoshi Shinjo, who played for the Mets in Colorado, smaller guys like that, who are just, they still draw a little bit. They still get some attention there, but I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe I'm playing devil's advocate. Maybe Toronto is trying to make a bit of a splash here and say, you know what, we can draw some outside money as well in this.
Nomo, I remember Hideo Nomo. It was Hideo Nomo, right?
Yes.
It's the first. Yeah, he was like the first big. That's what I remember. He was the first major star to come over, like the tornado with that unique throwing motion and everything. And I think he went to the Dodgers.
Yeah,
and that was like a huge deal because that was like, okay, they're the closest team to Japan. And that was like such a big deal that they got him. And it was just for the same thing. Like Scott said, it was a draw. Like they had all eyeballs on the Dodgers that year. And it was like, so with Hideki Matsui, they were tuned into the S Network, and plus he was such a smash, he was a hit. As soon as he came in, he had the 2 home runs, I think, in his debut game. So he was instantly a magnet. Like, okay, he's still doing what he did in Japan. And it was I could totally see it, trying to draw in some extra revenue and stuff. So
what I am concerned with is what does that say about Ryu? Ryu performed for the Blue Jays like no other last season, and you go ahead and now you offer this guy more than you offer your number one guy. I mean,
that's the nature of the contractual beast, though. You sign a 4-year deal.
We are in a pandemic era. And then you have the offer that, which I still don't understand, George Springer, why he hasn't signed yet on the dotted line when they offer him $25 million more than what he's asking for. They offer him $150 million.
I think the era of signing early in free agency is a thing of the past. Because you saw what happened with Bryce Harper, you saw what happened with Manny Machado. These guys signed so late into the season, especially with now the season very possibly starting later. They have more time to work with us a little bit, where the whole thing was you sign a guy like a month, within a month after free agency. I think that's gone now. So I think Springer's going to sign sometime in the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, my guess, before February is going to be my assumption on this. But yeah, you have to look at it from the budgetary standpoint, because again, how much money do the Blue Jays have? If they sink that kind of money into Zagano, what do they have left for Springer? What do they have left for?
Oh, they have money. Don't worry. Rogers Communications has a lot of cash.
But what happens is you're not looking at it now. You got to look at it from a few years from now too, because you're going to have a problem where you're going to have BGO, you're going to have Guerrero, you're going to have Bichette. These guys are going to get money. The same problem the Yankees have right now, where that Stanton contract and the Garrett Cole contract are going to be brutal. So when players like Gleyber Torres, Aaron Judge, people like that are going to get their bank, these are contracts that are still going to be albatrosses. Toronto could conceivably have the same problem if they sign Zagano for that kind of money, which is why I'm saying it's a big risk. But maybe they can generate some, like I said, overseas revenue as well.
Plus, their tax space is 100. They have a ton of it. They almost have. I don't know if there's a floor. Is there a floor in baseball? Because they're only halfway to the threshold. So
I don't think there's a floor. I think it's just a ceiling. I think you have the luxury tax ceiling. But I knew some other sports that's. I think the NBA has a floor. There's a couple other leagues I know that do have a floor for that reason. Like it forces you. I think it was the NBA. It's like a Donald Sterling thing actually that goes back to him when he had owned the Clippers and he used to just, he'd have a number 1 draft pick, then trade him, and he was hardly spending any money, and he was making millions. And they were the worst team in the league, but they were one of the most profitable teams in the league.
Right. Yeah. I think you're 100% right that wasn't Donald Sterling thing that put that into effect for the NBA and their players.
So we are going to drift a little bit from baseball, and we are going to talk about what Obi mentioned just before the show and the downfall of the Canadian juniors at the World Hockey Championships. It was just disastrous. I mean, you wouldn't have expected that of the Canadian team. Obi, you want to get us started?
Part of my excitement about joining the Sports Den was it's forcing me to get into hockey and what is going on in hockey right now, but these junior worlds. And so I've been keeping my eyes on it a bit. And that Canadian team was such a jug. It was like the 18-0 Patriots. It was a monster. 41 goals for, 4 against. I think it was 4 shutouts heading into the championship game. The Americans had 8 guys returning from a team that finished 6th last year. Questions about Knight in between the pipes all tournament. And nobody was giving us a chance, us being the Americans. And they just put the pressure on early, sort of late in the first period, but got the pressure on for the last half of the first period, scored a quick goal to start the second period. And Knight was unbelievable between the pipes last night. And what I love most about hockey usually is the international game, and it was great last night. And to see the Americans pull it off against a team that was not beatable was pretty impressive.
Knight went like full Steph Curry. There's gonna be a Knight meme with from Jordan in The Last Dance. Like he took it personal, like that. They were, like you said, they were questioning him. He's like, okay, like that's the thing with hockey. If there's one player, one position that changes a game, it's goalie. It's a goaltender. You see it in the NHL where you could be a mediocre team and all of a sudden your goalie gets hot for like 2 rounds. The next thing you know, you're in the conference final and the goalie's got like a 0.98 goals against average. And you're like, how did they get there? And you're like, oh, because he's just stopping everything that we throw.
It works for some teams. It didn't work for Montreal. Price was outstanding, but everybody else was crap.
Yeah, Price, the years, and he's just had so much bad luck with getting hurt. Like he gets hurt in the playoffs or at the end of the season, and there's years where you're like, okay, this is the year. They're gonna make a run, and then he pulls a groin or a hamstring, and you're like, oh, okay, this is not the year.
Yeah. So no, in regards to the Canadian team, I mean, I don't know what happened to our coach. He changed the lines for the first time since the tournament started. Like he had H.E.R in the 3rd line instead of the 1st line. I mean, they had no defensive team in the 1st line. That 1st line was awful. And I don't know what happened. I mean, it's just disastrous. Like, I think we are going to have a couple of days of mourning here in Canada.
I was about to ask you about that, how you guys are handling it up there.
Like, the only thing that was worthwhile through this pandemic was the idea of watching the juniors. And I went out the door. So, it's not a very good picture right now in Toronto or anywhere in Canada, I imagine. I mean, when you have 21 first round pickers on your team and you cannot win, what else can you assemble for next time?
I do think, having watched that game, that was one of those situations where in hockey we usually go best of 7, and America was definitely benefited from a best of 1. They had as good a game as they could have. Like I said, Knight, because the last 4 minutes of that game too, that Knight still stopping everything, and they would basically empty net for the last 4 minutes, 6-on-5, everything right in front of the net, right in the middle, and he was everything. He found a way to get pad on it, glove on it. The rest of the offense was playing like defense, getting down, putting their bodies in front of pucks. So if it was best of 7, I don't know that continues. But for one game, it was what.
It's like the Miracle on Ice Part 2.
They've been talking about it that way.
Beats us 10 times, 9 times out of 10. Tonight's the night they beat them.
Not this game, not tonight.
Tonight.
Not tonight. maybe it was in preparation for today. Give us something to smile about as a country together.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people in the U.S. are even familiar with that fact that's going on. I mean, aside from current events happening.
No, yeah, I wouldn't have. Like I said, had I not been part of the show, even as an avid sports fan, I don't know that I would have known it was going on.
Well, I respect your commitment to basically, the research part of it. I'll give you props on that.
Hey, I was the benefactor of that because I got to watch really good hockey over the last couple of days.
So now I have another question for you guys. Lake Placid is going to be hosting the PWHL tournament. Where do you guys see that tournament going? Women's hockey. It's believe it or not, it's exciting.
It's a big deal in this particular case. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. You said it was Lake Placid is the proper place, I think, to have it. If you're U.S. and hockey with everything like that. I would have to, what do you think, Rob?
I don't know much about women's hockey, but I know that if it's
admittedly neither do I. So I'm sorry to throw you under the bus there.
No, but I mean, like, it is one of those sports that I really like. I follow women's soccer actually a lot, and I've gotten into it because of working at the colleges and stuff. But women's hockey is a sport that I want to see blow up like women's soccer because it's there. Like, there's a popularity. I dated a girl who played for University of North Dakota a couple of years ago, so it's like I know I love like I was a big fan of Manon Rayum when I was a kid. Like that was like my first female athlete crush. Like when she played for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I was like, oh my God, this chick's awesome. She was a goalie, and I was like, oh, and she's hot. I was like, this is great. Like, and I really wanted to see her like make the main roster and start. And I know she played in like exhibition games and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think I watched her in the Olympics and everything. So yeah, I'm looking at the 2020 PHL playoffs and stuff. So it got
canceled last time around because of COVID. Unsurprising.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned Manon Rayon because her brother Pascal played for the Devils for a little while.
Yes, he did.
That's where he got to start, I think, initially.
Yes. When we just had a random conversation about the weirdest team names. It was like the Albany River Rats.
Oh yeah. Hang on a second. Give it a second. I'll do what you need. There's a team I found the other day. The Rays AA team.
No, 4. I'm looking at the old playoff thing where it was supposed to be, I guess, Cambridge, Burlington, Kingston, Elticake, Stony Creek, Oakville, Toronto, and Ottawa. I say Ottawa's actually got the same logo as the Senators.
Yeah. The new team for Toronto is actually debuting. It's going to make the debut in this tournament. Is the Toronto 6, and it's interesting because we have the president and head coach of the team is Gidget Murphy, and she is probably the biggest name in women's hockey throughout. And the first thing that she said, "I am going back to Lake Placid to where I won a gold." So she's going now as a coach, but it's interesting to see the evolution of women's hockey and the notoriety that this might be the stepping stone. They landed a deal yesterday, coincidentally, with NBC Sports. They are going to be transmitting the tournament, so nice. It's huge.
Yeah, it's like a sport here where it's funny is like Canada kind of ruins the party for the U.S. all the time, like especially in women's hockey, because the women's U.S. team is always like silver medal, so they always end up coming up second to Canada, and I think that's one of the things where like it hasn't gotten over that hump yet, the way women's soccer did, where women's soccer became the premier team and like the top team in the world. But they're always good, and you always see, like, I watch it during the Olympics, I'm always into it and everything, and I'm like, oh, it's a really good team, and I know you can pretty much guarantee like it's going to be the U.S. versus Canada for the gold medal unless something crazy happens, and it's usually Canada walking away with the gold. And I think that's probably the only reason it hasn't really gotten over the hump in terms of popularity and recognition here in the States as much. And I'm sure like the girl I dated was from the UP in Michigan. She played at North Dakota, also played at Michigan Tech. It's very big up north in like the Midwest and those areas, Minnesota, Michigan. Probably, I'm sure Buffalo, like right outside Toronto.
Buffalo has a team.
Like it's in the north. Bandits. It's probably way more popular, even in the Boston area. I'm sure it's got a little more popularity and recognition. When you get further away from Canada, it just kind of dies out for some reason, and it really fans are missing out because if you like hockey, women's hockey is just as good as men's hockey. It doesn't have the fighting, but you don't really need the fighting. It's like
it's a lost art now anyway.
Yeah, you're still going to see excellent play. Like it's, so to say like, oh, it's because to not watch it because they're not the best team in the world is like a really bad excuse. And it's something like we're really slacking on down here that we need to pick up on. So I'm actually excited. The one school I work for just switched conferences. And I was like, how long do we have to wait post-pandemic before we officially make our men's hockey team varsity? Because they're in like the same conference as Maine, which is like one of the top teams, typically up in the Frozen Four. A few other schools like New Hampshire, Vermont. And I'm like, oh, we're totally in like a hockey conference now. And I'm like stoked about it.
What conference are they in now?
America East. NJIT went to America East after like 10 years of trying to get in.
I got to say, one of the very impressive, I started looking at the you mentioned the six. I'm just looking at the team's logos. And these are some really impressive logos. And the number one reason they're impressive is not a single one of them has any hockey reference into it. And that's a great thing for a logo because it says this logo should stand on its own. And to me, that just means that this is a group of folks who thinks that this is going to be a powerful league. And, the websites are all great. And like you said, women's hockey is a sport that can stand on its own because when the teams are even, hockey is a great sport. And so by making you're not going to be diminished in any way by it. And the six does have the best logo. That is a great logo.
I think it's going to require some time though. And also it's going to have to be something that's going to have to dodge a regular schedule. So having it go up in general, you have any smaller sports like that, you cannot have them go head to head against something that has been around for a while. So for example, with the XFL, and the AAF and all the rest of them, they made sure to play in the spring where there's no way they could possibly overlap in any way, with the NFL. The spring league was in a lot of ways the same way. They did play a lot of those games in the middle of the week, just so people would not have to choose in this case and hurt the league long term. So they're going to have to play that game for probably another 3 or 4 years would be my guess. But then but people will gravitate to it. People will catch on to it. The biggest question is, will it retain enough interest there? Because again, like Rob said, people are really expecting like level up here when you're actually going to maybe come into that here, and people will complain about it. I saw that with the XFL a lot. People were like, well, it's not the NFL. Yeah, no kidding, it's not the NFL. But it's there, it's exciting, it's entertaining. That's what women's hockey can be. And if you're looking for hockey, you know what? Take it.
And one of the things that it has is that it's going to be a lot more affordable, and the arenas you are going to be closer to the action because of the arenas where they are playing.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's all like I said with it's similar to the WNBA here. Like that runs in the NBA off season. And another thing that we actually had decent success with here was softball. But like as Eduardo was saying, we use the smaller arenas for that. And a lot of times with like when the women's professional soccer league, the I think it's Sky Blue, one is the Jersey team. Yeah. They've played in Red Bull Arena, but they don't fill it out. But they play at like one of the college camp. I forget where they play, but it's typically they'll play at like a college camp stadium or field because it's smaller and it's easy. It's better suited for them, and you pack it in a lot better. It looks better aesthetically if you're broadcasting or you're streaming. So I think that's a big thing too, is not overstepping your bounds and stuff. The WNBA, I remember the Liberty playing in the Paramount Theater one year. And they basically like the benches were on one side and all the fans were on the other, as opposed to like when the league first started, they were able to sell out like the entire bottom row of the garden. And then it died out. And it's like, okay, you got to kind of compact to a smaller arena. And it looks better aesthetically. Like I said, when you're streaming, you don't have empty seats. And in the college game, that's always a big issue. It's like, hey, try not to shoot this angle because that entire section of the crowd is empty. So now we have cutouts. So we'll probably just use the cutouts for the empty sections from now on.
No more tarps. But I think that between the WNBA, Women's World Cup Soccer, and MMA, we have reached a point where people are interested in seeing women's sports at whatever that level is. I mean, in MMA, I know half the fights I'm watching for the women's fight because they are competitive and they are skilled. And I think we've reached that sort of point in our culture now. So you do have to make the arenas look full. So I don't feel like I'm the only one watching. I think that's a big thing. I think it's, why am I the only one watching this? There's nobody there. So right now it's real difficult to be getting up and going, but it does have support of the NHL, which is big because the NHL is going to support things. Then just like the WNBA, there's money there to absorb the losses in the beginning, which the XFL, did not have. The NFL was like, live or die. That's your own thing. So having that money backing it is big. And like we've all said, women's hockey is a great sport when we watched it. None of us have been like, oh, you can tell they're slower. None of us have said that. It's not what's going on. It's a crisp, clean, good sport.
I would tell the average person who thinks women's hockey is slow, if you try to play against some of these girls and see how slow they are. Like, they're not that slow. I played with some in LA when I'm out there, and I'm like, it's always funny because it's like someone will come out and go, oh, yeah, she played for like UND or something. Oh, my God, yeah, whatever. And then I'm like, okay. I'm like, yeah, don't put me out there for the first shift with her. I want to see from a distance how bad it's going to be. And then they get the puck, and they just skate circles around people. And I'm like, yeah, that's why. I was like, okay, I know it's no joke now. Like, take them seriously and treat them just like anybody else you're on the rink with and respect it. So,
yeah.
So I want to bring it back to baseball, and I'm going to bring the New York question. Which of the two New York teams Mr. LeMahieu will end up with?
Of the two New York teams?
Yeah, because he doesn't want to leave New York. It seems.
I've been rolling with a lot of the baseball stuff. If anyone else wants to take a crack at it, I'll stay back for a sec. I have my own opinions.
He stays with the Yankees. I think they're gonna if the Mets make like a max offer, it's gonna force their hand. They're gonna have to sign him. They've been talking that because there's a whole plan. I think they want to give him a 5-year deal, but the plan they're trying to work out involves like 4 years and then giving him an extension later on because they've been talking about re-signing him. He'll play second for a season. One of the scenarios that made the most sense to me was him playing second this year, Glaber playing short, and then them trying to get Lindor in the offseason or via trade, and then basically shifting everything to the right, putting LeMahieu at first, Glaber at second, and Lindor at short. So it kind of involves how much money they're going to have left over for Lindor. So it's a debate. They don't want to see him go to the Mets, but I'm not really sold on the Mets. Like, the Met fans think that because they got billionaire Steve Cohen that he's going to make it rain like he's at a strip club or something. And I listened to Sandy Alderson was doing an interview 2 weeks ago, and they asked him, like, oh, what's Steve Cohen like? And he's like, he's very inquisitive. He's very inquisitive about baseball and about business. And that's all I needed to hear to know this guy's not wasting his money. Like, Met fans figured he would buy out Robbie Cano after he popped positive and got suspended. And they said it, they go, this is not a guy who made billions of dollars by just throwing money around. Like, he invested wisely. And when Sandy Alderson says he's inquisitive, it's like, okay, how much, what's this guy really worth? What does he do? And I think a great sign was like the McCann signing. They didn't get Romuto. They went and got somebody for less money who can probably do the job just as well. And that's where he's at. Okay, I don't need to spend $50 million on this guy. I can get the job done with $30 million on this guy and have 20 left over. So I always tell Met fans, I'm like, don't think you're going out and getting everybody. Like, they thought they were getting Springer. They thought they were going to get every major free agent on the market.
Tanaka was actually a possibility of a Met shooter.
They were like, for a while. Everybody, every free agent on the market was supposedly signing with the Mets as soon as Cohen became the official owner. And have they even gotten one yet? Trevor Bauer's still out there, right? And they didn't sign
Toronto recently. Yeah, but no.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a Mets fan, and this is the suffering dynamic that they usually have, they're in the perpetual shadow of the Yankees. So you need to have that splash of wow. You know, I mean, arguably one of the last times you actually ever saw that was when they got Mike Piazza. They dominated. I mean, this was 1998, but they dominated the headlines by getting the best catcher in the game. And for a while, they really held on to that title of most relevant in New York. But the Yankees are typically always have been that. Even when the Mets, you know, in the 80s, we know when they won the World Series and everything like that, it was maybe at best even, at best. Because those Yankee teams were still doing pretty darn well in their own right anyway. So I think it's one of those things that when you're a suffering Mets fan, you hold on and grasp onto any straw you can for that level of hope that you're going to be able to just do Yankee money and just get whoever you can. I mean, that's what they try to do. They got Cano for that reason. You know, they added a few things like that. But the Mets are not built like the Yankees are. They are, frankly, a middle market team in a big market city.
So I'm going to not agree with that wholeheartedly.
You suck. No.
I think that you're giving there's some truth to that the Mets fans sometimes forget that they should be competing on the field and not for the back pages.
Mm-hmm.
Fans forget that. But what Rob said, and what gives me hope as a Met fan, is that Cohen knows he's competing on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in there for your first year in anything, there's a lot of you got to sit back and learn and let trust some of the people. And you don't have to win it this year. You just have to prove that you're thinking and learning and slowly bring out the money to get the right big free agents, not just, Cano used to be a Yankee. We'll put ourselves on the back page again. In the 80s, the Mets were the better team, but the Yankees were still winning the back pages with Mattingly. And in the Piazza years, as good as the Mets were, the Yankees were the better team. That was the Torre heydays as well.
Yeah.
When they finally did get to the World Series, they lost to the Torre Yankees. But that was a thought out, good signing with Piazza. Good signing with Olga. Those are the two guys they brought in, two guys they thought about. When they brought in Hernandez and paired him with Strawberry, that was, again, good thinking. But then, they go off on their tangents and grab Bobby Bonilla. And we're still paying for that.
We're still getting paid to this day.
$1 million every July 1st.
The other problem with the Mets has been like they give up so much of their future for like a guy like Robbie Cano. Like they've traded so many good prospects away. And you look at back when they were really good, they just signed guys. Like they didn't go out and they didn't sell the farm to get one superstar. Like they had a good young talent. Even when they lost to the Yankees in the series, they had a bunch of young guys that came up through their system. Like I remember Benny Agbayani and was it Jay Walker or something? The other center, their outfielder.
Timo Perez was in the team.
Yeah, Perez, like Ray Ordonez. Like they had guys that came up through their system that they could afford, that were talented. They didn't have to spend the bank and like ship out trying to win a championship with one guy. So that's always been their problem too, and that's why I think there's hope with them with Cohen, because he's not going to be that guy. It's not just a money thing. He seems to understand the value of the players as well. Like, okay, this guy's worth more to me in the long run than this guy for 2 years and X amount of dollars.
I guess what I'm trying to say in this case here is that they're trying to match the Yankees, like I said, on the headline part of it, where they're almost in a way, I want to say intimidated a little bit, where they would make moves that are maybe considered a little more knee-jerk to gain the headlines, to get the ego thing, which hurts them in the long run. I mean, we'll go back to that 2000 team. They traded Melvin Mora for Scott Bordick. And they got Bordick for like 3 or 4 months, whatever it was. He batted like barely above the Mendoza line, and they went back to Baltimore. And then meanwhile, Melvin Mora had a phenomenal career. You look at Victor Zambrano. They traded Scott Kazmir to get him, and everybody across the country was like, "What? Why?" Because I think sometimes they get a little intimidated by the Yankees.
I think that's fair. I think they are competing for that back page too often. Over the 30, 40 years I've been rooting for them, there's times when they're like, the back page move is more important. And then, don't get me wrong, when they do win that back page war, the Yankees retaliate on the back page too. Like they'll go and do something stupid also.
Oh yeah.
They do less stupid things less often because their natural thing that they do is going to win the back page. Plus,
they had a really bad run for a while when they were it was a competition with the Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
They signed guys that the Yankees, and that's the thing with the Yankees is certain guys, no matter how good they are, don't fit the system. They don't fit the organization. Like one of the biggest busts was Giambi. Like the guy they wanted to sign was the Bay City bad boy with the beard, with the scruff beard, the long hair, and the tattoos. And he comes in, he's got to cut his hair, shave, and everything. And I'm like, that's not Giambi. Like, that's not the guy you signed who hits 30, 40 home runs a year. Same thing with Randy Johnson. Like, they got him at the end of his career, and it was they were signing these guys too because they didn't want the Red Sox to have them.
They were doing their own panic move. They were doing their own panic move as well. Yeah.
A-Rod barely fit in. Let's face it. They took the best shortstop in baseball and made him play third base, and it just never fully fit.
He did win a couple MVPs though, in his respect. But.
And he did finally get a World Series for them. Yeah. I mean, and he was still a great player. He just went from the best player in baseball to like the 10th best player in baseball, and because he just didn't fully fit in there.
Thank God for Kate Hudson. That's all I have to say. They were dating the year he won, and everybody credited Kate Hudson with Alex Rodriguez having a good postseason.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Mets, because they had, although they don't look good in paper, they probably have one of the best rotations right now for starting pitching. And it's incredible that they managed to keep those guys steady. I mean, you look at what they have in Marcus Stroman,
who's coming back.
He's coming back. I was going to say, I knew it was I didn't hear officially if he was coming back or not. I know he changed his tune real quick, like because there were rumors that he threw a tantrum when he got traded, and he was like, I don't want to go there. I want to be a Yankee. And then when he kind of sat out, and then all of a sudden Cohen came in and was like, hey, we got DeGrom. We still got Syndergaard. We might go get Trevor Bauer, and things suddenly did like a 180. And he was like, hey, I'm still interested in playing, and I'm from New York. Like he's buying in a little more all of a sudden, which is good. He can help them. I don't expect him, he's not the guy you expect to be like a 1, maybe even a solid 2, but if you can get him in like a third
he's your third guy.
Yeah, you put him in like a 3 or 4 spot, he's going to be super effective. Like kind of like Andy Pettitte later in his career, like just 3 or 4, give him some run support, and you can get double-digit wins with him very easily throughout the season.
Well, they're going to be relying heavy on Syndergaard too, because they got him back now for another year.
So I want to touch base on the Chicago Cubs, because the Cubbies are like going in a down spiral very quickly.
Yeah,
they want to trade everybody. To the point that they want to trade Anthony Rizzo, which I still don't understand. He is Chicago. You get rid of Rizzo and you don't have a team. Contreras is rumored to be going out to Philadelphia. I don't know why, but why does Philadelphia need Contreras? I am not sure. Then you have Jacob DeRossi going out to the Red Sox. I don't know. I mean,
they're kind of in that panic from like Theo's gone, so now I think they're trying to find. I think it might be a panic of trying to find a new identity now that Theo Epstein's gone, and I mean Theo does what Theo does. He comes in, he does his thing, and he leaves, but. I think the Red Sox they should just have done what the Red Sox did. It ain't broke. Don't try to fix it. Don't panic. Like it's not like he left the team in shambles. Like he left the team, it was a good, with a solid roster and everything. So it's not like they need to panic and stuff like that. But sometimes that's what they do. Everybody wants to, okay, let's, we got rid of our GM. Let's go rebuild. And it's an ownership thing, I think, more than anything.
It could be an egotistical brand thing, I mean, who knows what kind of feathers were ruffled, with Theo. You said Theo's going to be Theo. So when he left, a lot of them might want to be like, maybe the ownership was looking at it from the standpoint of, we're going to build this our way. We're going to show that we're able to do it without him. And in the process, just dump everybody they've got.
Yeah.
You see that sometimes with TV shows when you have somebody else taking over. And then they kind of just dismantle everything that was built up previously. No, sorry. I didn't say that out loud there. But so I don't know. It could be a case like that with the Cubs where, Theo's gone. Let's rebrand it in the image that we have to show that we can do it without him.
Now, it's interesting. We are looking at New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and you see the management of those three teams, and you see it now with Dombrowski, a team in Philadelphia that probably will evolve somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's just phenomenal at what he does, and I hope that that team evolves more than goes into a spiral, because they haven't had luck.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing with this. I don't really have a lot of faith necessarily. I like Girardi, always have, but I have questioned from the beginning that Bryce Harper deal, which, like the Stanton deal and some of the other ones, I think is going to become an albatross contract. They are there for now. They're there to try and do this now. Yeah. But to be honest, I am not really convinced that Bryce Harper is the best fit for Philadelphia and vice versa. I don't see him really putting up the continual good numbers. I mean, last year for a shortened season, it wasn't bad, but he still only batted .268. I mean, he had 13 home runs, 33 RBIs in 58 games. That comes out to only be about roughly 80, 81 RBIs. His on-base percentage, granted, was .420, which is solid, but you're not paying that guy for a .420 on-base percentage. You're paying him for runs scored and batting average and all the rest of it. You're paying to make sure that, he gets people in. And at 33 RBIs in 58 games, that's bad. And 58 games played, not 58 games in the season, 58 games played. 33 RBIs is not getting it done for that massive contract.
Yeah, that's my big beef with him is, overpaid and underproductive. Even when he was he's just too inconsistent. Mm-hmm. Like, he could come out this year and light it up, but then the next 2 years he'll be completely off the mark. And and they're like, it's like he'll underachieve, and it's like, oh, well, nobody around him played well. It's like, no, he's paid to be the guy. Like, he's there to be like the franchise player, and he's got to be more consistent.
There's something to be said that Washington won as soon as he left.
Mm-hmm.
There's that, and that's number one. And baseball is a sport unlike any other, where we were talking about before certain players not fitting with the Yankees. You really have to fit with your team and the culture, and the city is reflected in the culture, and it all wraps around each other. And I agree. It's down here in Philly. Harper's a little brash, which works for him, but it's not the Philadelphia baseball ethos. It really isn't. When Howard was here smashing home runs, he was still kind of, I'm surprisingly able to hit home runs. And, they chased Rollins out of town because he was a little, and Abreu because they were too brash in their way. But, I don't feel Harper fully fits in, and he better produce like he's Michael Jack Schmidt, or he's never going to be accepted down here.
So, recent signing, first women's coach in a major league roster, Bianca Smith. Where do you think this is going, guys? Do we see more integration of women into major roles with NG as general manager, and now Bianca signing as a coach with the Red Sox?
I think it's coming. It's coming. I mean, like the whole Becky Hammond thing was. I love Popovich's response to it. They're like, oh, he's like, yeah. He goes, what did you think was? He goes, we know what she's capable of doing. Like, I think in terms of integration with female coaches, she'll be the first female coach in the NBA. It's just a matter of when. I think there's been, what didn't the NFL had, was the Cardinals had the female coach a year ago or something? They
49ers, the offensive line coach.
49, that's what it was, 49ers, yeah. Was it in the Super Bowl too, wasn't it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's there. It's like I said, it's not. I think the Popovich quote about Becky Hammond just summarized it perfectly. It has nothing to do with their gender. Mm-hmm. Are you qualified? Are you smart enough to, are they smart enough to run the team? Do they know what they're doing? Then yes, it shouldn't matter what their gender is. If they know what they're doing, then it's their job. And he said when he put her in, he goes, this was her scout game. Mm-hmm. This was the team that she prepped for. So that's why she was made the acting coach. And it was such a pop thing for him to do too. He was like, yeah, whatever. Like he goes, it's not a big deal. He goes, I understand why people are making a big deal about it, but he's like basically answering going, it wasn't a big deal for us because we were prepared for it. Like we knew this day would come at some point. And I'm always somebody who looks at Pop and goes, did you know this was her game? And you were like, I would like to take a break early tonight. So let's make some history. And just gets teed up and thrown out.
Right. So yeah, I agree with you, but I also feel like if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, we would be like, well, I guess someday it's gonna. But the moment the Spurs brought her on years ago, just as an assistant, you saw it. You know, there were already female officials in the game. My kids wouldn't even know that there weren't females on the sidelines at one point. Like it's there now. So the barriers have been broken down enough that it's just, like you said, a matter of not if, but when. Who's going to be that first woman to truly get that chance? And I wouldn't be surprised if the first place it actually happens big time is a college basketball team. I just think that will probably be the first major sport, if you will, women's head coach.
I had a female coach in college for men's volleyball. Like my senior year, we ended up with our coach didn't come back, and our assistant was a female the year before. She took over and was the head coach, and I had no problems with it. I was like, it's just she knew what she was doing. She was qualified and capable of handling the job, and you could tell some of my teammates tried to give her a hard time at points. Like, oh, she's a woman and she put her foot down, and I was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't try that again. Like, it's not going to work out well for you.
So the big guy from New York is having a little issue in Florida now because it seems that Kim NG and Eric are having kind of rub-ins with decision-making. As Derek always likes to be a hands-on guy and tries to dictate, and it seems that Kim NG is just giving him hassle and saying, you hire me to do a job, let me do it.
Is that with the Marlins?
Yeah.
Derek? Yeah. People have questioned what he's done, and then they make the playoffs this season. So it's kind of like let him do his job. Even people questioned the trade, some of the signings and other things he did, and it's like in the end it worked out. So kind of let it rise, see what he's doing. I mean, he comes from a very good pedigree of playing with the Yankees. I'm sure he was very attentive to like how Cashman and the Steinbrenners ran things, and being the captain, he was probably more involved than people realize when he was with the Yankees, and he's trying to translate that down into Miami. So I would trust him, and I would let him do his thing and see how it works out. I'm sure they won't be disappointed in the end.
It's a
so
team
guys,
on the.
I want to thank you very much. We are out of time. I will have you back again because it's a great conversation with you three. And I just want to let everybody know in our world of Barn Burner that this show can be heard on the Barn Burner Radio Network and its 122 platforms on social media. Please remember to go to our website, barnburner.ca, for all the news, whether it is in audio, video, or written. Remember, Barn Burner, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, but especially live it, because Barn Burner is sport, and sports is Barn Burner. In the name of Scott Churchson, Rob Stats, and Obi Shaw. This has been Eduardo Harari for Spanglish Sports World on ZINGOTV, Channel 250, and the Barn Burner Network. Please stay at home. Please stay safe in these troublesome times of COVID-19.